Alright, I'm Zach and welcome to the breakdown of Kamen Rider Gavv Episode 3. In this episode, we get the debut of a new gummy module. Shoma learns an important lesson that maybe not all humans should be trusted. And two of the Gochizos get kidnapped? Let's get into it. This episode actually starts off with our introduction of the villain of the week, the Bon Granute, who is our first female monster of the week in Gavv. We see her turning in her harvest of Hito presses for the month, and this time we actually see that the Hito presses come in different colors. So far we've only seen Hito presses in the kind of pinkish red color. This yellow color is new. And based on what's being said in the dialogue in this scene, the yellow may represent that this is a higher quality of Hito press than the pinkish red color. And they pay the Bon Granute 5 dark treats for this. This just goes to show how much higher quality the yellow Hito presses might be, because we saw the Hound Granute turn in a similar number of Hito presses, but they were all red, and he only got paid with 1. After this, Sheeta then informs Jeeb about Gavv. And note that in this scene, the image on the phone is glitching. This seems to be an effect that Sheeta and Jeeb have commonly, that electronic screens just malfunction around them. And both of them assign one of Jeeb's agents to investigate Gavv. Although I will say that it's interesting that Sheeta is simultaneously giving orders to one of Jeeb's agents. Now moving on to Shoma's storyline for the episode, we find that he has already spent all of the money that Sachika paid him on snacks. Shoma then runs into his new companion for this week, the unnamed man. Yeah, so throughout this entire episode, they actually never say this character's name in dialogue. But the credits do list him as being named Sugimoto. And just after Shoma accidentally throws a pack of poppin' gummies at Sugimoto, Shoma then collapses from exhaustion. But Sugimoto, being the nice guy that he is, treats Shoma to a meal to restore his energy. When he's questioned about not having any money, Shoma shows Sugimoto his taste journal to explain what he's been spending his money on. Seeing the taste journal makes Sugimoto realize that Shoma has no idea how to eat properly, and so he explains to Shoma that snacks are just supposed to be for special occasions, and that for everyday eating, you're supposed to eat rice, meat, and vegetables. And that's the only way to actually have proper nutrition. And the fact that Shoma hasn't really been eating those things too much is probably the reason why he passed out. Which this is actually the perfect opportunity for me to remind y'all that we have the Kamen Rider Gavv Community Challenge going on right now. Every week we have a new health, nutrition, fitness-based challenge. I usually put out information about the challenge out via YouTube Shorts or the community page, so just check that out. But if this is the first you're hearing about it, I invite you to play catch up, or just jump in on any week you like. All it is it's about us, getting healthier, feeling better, all that. Alright, back to the episode. And also, if you look in the background in the food truck, you can see the Bon Granute working. And in addition to his important lesson about basic nutrition, Sugimoto also shares with Shoma a lesson about basically his unhealthy relationship with food, and teaches Shoma to eat his feelings. And with Shoma's energy restored from the meal, he runs over and helps a construction crew lift a heavy block of stone that they were actually planning on using a crane to lift. So once again, great job protecting his secret. Seeing this, Sugimoto realizes that Shoma could be useful to him, and he offers him a job. The two get dressed up in construction equipment and arrive at a house to inspect some pipes. When the owner doesn't open the door, Sugimoto puts on an act to convince Shoma that the owner might have collapsed inside, which convinces Shoma to bust down the door. The house belongs to someone named Yamada, and we find out later that this is actually one of Sugimoto's co-workers. Which is kind of true to life. The majority of crimes are committed by somebody the victim knows. After searching the house, Shoma then finds Sugimoto raiding the office looking for money. And props to Shoma for not being super naive. He at this point actually realizes that he is accidentally helping Sugimoto rob the place. And he promptly picks up Sugimoto and drags him out of the house. Although I do have to wonder how this could have played out differently if Shoma had met Sugimoto before he met Sachika, or if Sachika hadn't been nice enough to pay Shoma in the last episode and teach him what Earth money looks like. And then we see a swarm of Gochizos clean up the ransacked office, showing just how useful these little guys can be. After the foiled robbery attempt, Shoma and Sugimoto sit down for a heart-to-heart chat. Sugimoto then explains to Shoma that he was only robbing people and trying to make money to save the company he works for, and that the owner of that company is sort of a mentor or father-like figure to Sugimoto, who helped him when he needed it. Shoma then questions Sugimoto about if he helped him only because he expected something in return, and this causes Sugimoto to simply storm off. And we see Shoma send a Gochizo to keep an eye on Sugimoto, showing another creative use for these little guys in this episode. Sugimoto returns to the food truck and finds it unattended. He takes the opportunity to try and rob it. And I do have to point out in this scene that even though Sugimoto is alone, he still has a moment of hesitation before stealing the cash. Which I have to say, despite not being named throughout the episode, he actually is a really nuanced and well-written, multi-dimensional character. Really got a lot of personality out of this character for just one episode. But the cash was unfortunately a trap set by the Bongranute, and Sugimoto gets compressed. And if you look close here as the money falls to the floor, you can actually see that probably a good majority of it was actually fake. And for some reason right at this moment they cut to the Stomach Inc. snack factory, and Glata is for some reason monologuing to herself about how the happier humans are, the more spice can be extracted from them. Meanwhile, back with Shoma, he's feeling down, and based on what Sugimoto said about eating his feelings, Shoma has decided that now is the right time to eat snacks. And Shoma finally finds a soda-flavored poppin' gummy, which honestly, as many bags of them as he's eaten, I'm really surprised that this is the first time he's finding one. Maybe it's a new flavor that they just started producing? And it is worth noting that the soda-flavored gummy is one of the items on Shoma's taste journal, so he can mark one off. And of course, after eating the gummy, the first of the Punchin' Gummy Gochizos is born. After a few moments to think to himself, Shoma concludes that no, he shouldn't commit crime. Although it is interesting that Shoma thinks about the Stomach family when he thinks about having to help someone against his will. I'm really curious to find out if there's more significance to this as we learn more. Oh, and then the Poppin' Gummy arrives and informs Shoma about Sugimoto being compressed. Shoma chases down the food truck on Varokan, and then confronts the Bongranute. And this time Shoma transforms immediately before the Granute can even attack him. You might remember in episode 2 that Shoma tried to attack the Granute before he transformed. It seems like he's learned since then. And the Bongranute takes their true form, which for anyone who didn't realize, the Bongranute's motif is actually a pufferfish. It's also noteworthy that when the Bongranute transforms, their voice actually is masculine. So it could be that this has actually been a male Granute this whole time, and that only their human disguise was female. And if that's the case, that may also explain what's going on with Sheeta and Jeeb. Now, before getting into the fight, we have to cover what HANTO's story for this episode has been. HANTO's investigation has found that people have started calling the bike riding monster Kamen Rider, meaning that, hey, they're actually going to be referred to as Kamen Riders in this show. We actually find out in this scene that HANTO's mentor Soji is also his foster father, or at least serves a similar role in his life. And now that HANTO is getting close to finding real monsters, Soji questions him if he has a plan for once he's found his mother's murderer. To which HANTO responds with, no, not really. We then find out that HANTO actually already knows Sachika, and they're familiar with each other to the point that Sachika has already assigned him the nickname of Hanti, despite HANTO really not liking this. We find out that HANTO has hired Sachika to do online investigative work for him at least 3 times in the past, which according to Sachika makes him a regular. Also, we see the return of Ritsu from episode 2, continuing the trend of the victim of the week from the previous episode returning in the next episode. Over the course of the conversation, HANTO finds out that Ritsu was a victim of a monster attack, and that she personally witnessed Gavv. A while later, Sachika calls HANTO and informs him that Kamen Rider has been sighted again. And now we get into the fight. Over the course of the battle, Gavv discovers that if he punches the monster in the fist, his fist will actually get stronger. You can actually see the comparison well here with an empowered fist versus a non-empowered fist. And it's at this point, following the information from Sachika, that HANTO arrives to witness the battle. And he begins filming, ecstatic to finally have evidence of real monsters. Shoma switches to using Zaku Zaku chips, finding that the slashing damage works better on this opponent. And this is a blink and you'll miss it moment, but it's another cool example of Shoma learning in the middle of a fight. The Granite purposely tries to get Shoma to hit his fists again to empower them further, but Shoma is mindful of this and is able to stop his attack before he hits, and then adjusts his swing to attack the torso. We then find that the Bongranute can fire its spikes like missiles, and Shoma withstands this, but the Zaku Zaku chip's armor does not. And we get pretty much the best look we've seen so far of Gav's base suit helmet. Gavv switches back to Poppin' Gummy and comedically gets bounced around by the missile impacts. And then the Punchin' Gummy Gochizo comes to the rescue. And then we have the debut of the Punchin' Gummy module. We can see that the Punch and Gummy module can be used kind of defensively too, because Shoma is able to just block these missile attacks. Oh, and by the way, the blue agent that was assigned to investigate Gavv is watching this battle from afar, and Shoma gets several good hits in with Punch and Gummy. But the Bongranut's fists get empowered again, which is honestly kind of BS because Shoma never actually hit them again. At least not until this point when they collide punches, which Gavv does win this clash, being able to push the Bongranut back. It's also worth noting that the Granut's fist doesn't get empowered any further after this, meaning that this state is probably the furthest its power can actually go. Gavv then charges up his finisher attack, which then reveals that his particles actually have the Bongranut surrounded. Gavv delivers his signature ultimatum, which obviously the Granut does not go for. But it is worth noting that HANTO is close enough to hear them talk about dark treats. And then Gavv finishes the Bongranut off with the Poppin' Gummy Punch, which causes the particles to condense into Poppin' Gummy fists, which then swarm the Bongranut. Which honestly, this is just kind of the bludgeoning damage version of the Zaku Zaku Chips finish from the last episode. And Shoma finishes the Bongranut off with one last big Rider Punch, which sends a shockwave through its entire body. And with that, the Bongranut is destroyed, and unfortunately so is the Punch and Gummy Gochizo. And as all of Shoma's little Gochizo children are watching in amazement, Choco Dan and Choco Dawn get kidnapped by a mysterious stranger. Which, with that being the case, I think we can pretty definitively say now that Shoma doesn't have any sort of psychic or empathetic connection to his Gochizos. And also, he doesn't really know how many he has or even really keeps track of them, because he doesn't seem concerned about this at all. Gavv then frees Sugimoto from the compression and pretty much just vaguely tells him to stop doing bad things. Again, it's worth noting that HANTO witnesses Gavv setting Sugimoto free. And soon after this, HANTO tries to confront Gavv, asking him if he's human. My speculation here is that HANTO wants to know if Gavv is human, because if Shoma is human, that could very well give HANTO a method for taking on his mother's murderer if he ever finds them. But this confrontation is interrupted by the arrival of our mysterious figure, and this character actually has a character bio on the website, so he's going to be a new recurring character. This is Kenzo Suga, and he questions Gavv on if he is a Granut or some other organism, which it's interesting that this character knows the term Granut. But HANTO and Suga bicker back and forth a little bit about interrupting each other, and this gives Shoma an opportunity to flee. But after Shoma flees, HANTO and Suga make introductions with each other, and HANTO finds out that Suga is a Granut researcher. And this seems like it might be the start of the next story arc of the show, which presumably will lead to the origin of Kamen Rider Valen. Sometime later, we see Sugimoto return to work, and we see his boss informing everyone that their company has gone out of business. And Sugimoto apologizes to his boss about never being able to repay him. And then he learns an important lesson about acts of kindness without expecting anything in return. Which actually, these two characters' relationship kind of parallels a lot of other relationships in the show. We have HANTO and Soji with their relationship, and we also have the relationship that Shoma kind of forms with everyone who randomly picks him up. And at the end, we see Jeeb's agent return to Sheeta and Jeeb with the information. And Sheeta and Jeeb react to seeing a red Gavv on the mysterious Kamen Rider. Which, honestly at this point, Shoma's their brother. Surely they know that he has a red Gavv, so they probably know it's him at this point. Alright, that does it for episode 3, everybody. Subscribe to the channel and all that regular YouTube stuff, I guess, and I'll see you next time.